We're rolling, so we can start now.
Okay.
Matt, thanks for joining the podcast. Number 4, just getting this rolling, and appreciate your time. Thought we'd just jump right into it. If you wanted to describe what you're doing with Start9 Labs, just give a brief introduction of your role and what the company's mission is and what you guys are doing for the general populace.
So I'm one of the co-founders and dev as well. I'm a full stack developer, but when it comes to Start9 and Embassy OS, my role has been almost exclusively on the front end side of things. The front end code base is owned by me. It's largely a lot of my work, but the back end of our products are not written in stuff that I'm familiar with. So Embassy OS backend's written in Rust. I don't do Rust. Aiden does. So that's my role. I'm one of the founders. I'm currently the CEO, and I write a lot of code as well. Start9 was founded by me and a few others in order to solve the problem of the requirement that trusted intermediaries be present for the dominant portion of your computing needs. For example, if you use your cell phone or laptop from just about anywhere to do just about anything, you are involving a trusted third party that is sitting between you and your data, that is intermediating your communications, that is custodying your data. And that is sort of how most people engage with computers today, is via that model, intermediated and custodied. And so we set out to make it possible for people to use computers to do ordinary things like send messages or store photos or files without the involvement of trusted third parties. So it's a very simple thing to say. It's a very hard thing to do. Considering that we've spent the last couple of decades as a species building critical infrastructure on top of this centralized, trusted model of computing that is most commonly referred to as cloud computing. Cloud computing is sort of the dominant form of computing on Earth right now. It has a very short history. It hasn't been around for very long. We don't expect that it will be around for much longer. It doesn't make sense. It has outsized risks and expenses. And we hope that we are at least part of the solution that will enable humans and computers to interact in a sovereign, independent way without the need for trusted third parties. And we call that sovereign computing. So we are out to invent and proliferate sovereign computing.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've listened to you speak on a few podcasts recently with Closing the Loop with John Vallis. I also listened to you speak at TabConf as well. And it gets a little technical. And for me, I would say I'm sufficiently technical. I don't program. I got into Bitcoin in 2020, and I was pretty much relying on all the major companies, Google, Facebook, using iMessage. And once I got into Bitcoin and put my money where my mouth was and my beliefs, I started to slowly go down the proverbial Bitcoin rabbit hole, and not just taking custody of my Bitcoin with my own keys, but also creating a password manager, using a password manager, being specific with a VPN that I use. I just recently got rid of Dropbox. And so I really think it's awesome that you're creating this easy way for anybody that's even, it seems like you don't have to be that technical either to use your operating system. You might need a little bit. But I'm excited to use it in the future. Eventually I'm gonna check it out and test it out. But I think it would be interesting to go through maybe what you were describing at TabConf. So how I believe it was the 1970s, how we went from personal computing to the web to cloud, and then now we're kind of in a nightmarish scenario. Would you mind just kind of running through that?
Yeah, sure. And to comment on something you said before that as well, Embassy OS, our operating system, is designed for mass market usage. We see ourselves at sitting at a similar point in a computing cycle that humanity was at in the late 70s and early 80s, which is that computers at that time, personal computers were largely usable, but only by technical people. They really weren't ready for mass market yet. And what made them ready for mass market was not some innovation in hardware or even at the application layer. It was an innovation at the operating system layer. This is Windows and the early Macs made it possible for a non-technical person to administer a personal computer by slapping a point and click graphical user interface on top of the computer's system. That's what we are doing as well, except our operating system, instead of being designed to operate a personal computer, our operating system is designed to operate a personal server, but it does the exact same thing that Windows and Mac did back in the early days. It wasn't Mac at that time, it was the Apple I and Apple II, but it basically puts a graphical user interface, point and click user interface on top of a personal server system. So, to walk through this is the high level brief history of computing as we see it at Start9. You have what I just described was the beginnings of personal computing, late 70s, early 80s. New devices and OSs came about that made it possible for average people to run a personal computer. And this sort of lit a fire under innovation for the next 40 years. Progressing through a couple different models very quickly. So we went from siloed, isolated personal computers that you could use in your home to do things like word processing or a calculator or play solitaire, to a network connected device. This is really coming into play in the early 90s, where you could now use your personal computer to reach out to the world and go surfing, right? To browse websites, primarily for the purpose of pulling data down, right? You're browsing around and pulling data down. You're not pushing anything up for the most part. You're mostly just looking around to see what's out there. But then things like AOL came about, where you could now start to store some things up there, on AOL servers, where you could start to chat using things like AIM, AOL Instant Messenger. And so you have the beginnings of what would become the cloud. And that really came into play in the early 2000s and really has now reached its peak through the 2010s and early 2020s, where basically everything takes place in the cloud. All compute and storage have all been moved to the cloud. And mostly what people are using these days are remote controls. So cell phones, laptops, desktops. By and large, the way that people use them is as a remote control for a computer that is located, owned, operated, and controlled by somebody else. And this has led us and others to begin using the phrase, the cloud is just someone else's computer. We think of it as this mythical place that's just floating around, our laptop, but it really is just us renting space on somebody else's computer. And we are renting that space. We pay for the privilege of using someone else's computer with our remote control. And we pay in two ways. One is with our data. We are giving up information about ourselves, our location, our likes, our dislikes, our plans, et cetera, to these third parties, which they can then use to monetize in various ways, primarily for advertising, selling that data to advertisers so that it shows back up to us on the other end. And the other way is through subscription models, so actual money payments each month. And while it has felt quite free for most people over the last decade or 10 to 15 years, it has actually been a delayed cost. Basically, we've been going into debt. We've been using this computing model seemingly for free while sort of racking up the bill. And what I mean by that is that there were huge, unseen, outsized risks associated with this model. Namely, the centralized collection and storage of millions of user data, creating massive honeypots for hackers, be they individuals, organizations, or nation states. Secondly, it has created a dependency. Many of us are absolutely dependent upon these systems for our personal and professional lives. And that was absolutely the intent of these companies from the get-go. It was a business model. Give it away for free, gather as much as you can, and then, breed dependency. And now comes the last part of that plan, which is squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. So now that we are dependent and there's only a few companies in control of all of this information, there isn't much you can do about it when the free tiers get smaller and smaller and the subscription rates get higher and higher. And so people are starting to look for a way out. And that's where our model of computing comes into play. It really wasn't possible until now, our model, because it can't match the convenience of the cloud model, at least not yet. And so nobody was going to go for it. The only reason that somebody would go for our model over the current, intermediated custodial cloud model is to preserve privacy, gain independence and sovereignty, which is just not like at the top of most people's lists, especially when these cloud models are promoting privacy, as in like use our system and we'll protect your privacy. Then they go, well, why do I need an independent sovereign computing model if Apple's protecting my privacy just fine? It requires a little bit more thought and knowledge of how Apple is protecting your privacy to know why it is insufficient, at least in the medium to long term. So that was long-winded. I don't know if I answered beyond the scope of your question, but
no, you definitely did. Would you actually be able to dive into? So I've seen that with Apple as well. They over the course of the past year, they've been marketing that they are private. And could you, for a non-technical or even maybe somewhere in the middle between myself, who's sufficiently technical, and someone that's kind of non-technical but could grasp it, why is it somewhat deceiving, Apple's messaging of being private, but also, providing this cloud service? How is it somewhat deceiving for people that are using that?
Yeah. Well, private means private. I hate to say that, but like if you tell somebody something, if you tell somebody a secret, it's no longer private. Not in the strictest sense of nobody knows it but you. You have now literally told somebody else. So while it may be sensitive information, even important, information, even a secret, it is no longer totally private to just you, right? You've included this other party. Generally speaking, when you have sensitive, secret, private information, you're only going to want to share it with somebody you trust, somebody that you really trust. And so in this model, when Apple says, we protect your privacy, all your sensitive information, your text messages, your photos, your geolocation, basically everything, including your voice, if you have, Siri listening, just this total window into everything that you do, you are trusting Apple with all of that. If Apple is trustworthy, meaning they are not only competent, extremely competent to, withstand nation state attacks on a 24/7, 365 basis, they'd have to be that competent, but also benevolent, meaning that you can trust them, not only that they're good at what they do, but that they're not going to lie to you or abuse their position of power. I don't think that there is anything, no evidence that anyone could lean on to cite that Apple is either of those things, that any third-party, nameless, faceless, giant corporation is either of those things. They are absolutely incompetent in certain, if not many ways, And they are absolutely not benevolent at any corner that will make them an extra buck and not ruin their brand and reputation. So they have to walk this fine line, Apple does, of how far can we abuse our position before people realize we're abusing our position. That is their goal. That is the strategy, the ultimate strategy of any third-party custodian or intermediary, is to take advantage of their position to whatever extent they can before people start abandoning them for other solutions. You can't trust Apple. You shouldn't trust Apple. Apple's not even a human being. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense to say, I trust Apple. Trust is reserved for things that could violate trust, right? So I don't say I trust Bitcoin. That's kind of a weird thing to say. I don't have to trust Bitcoin, right? That's the point. It's doing away with trust. Trust means that the thing that you are trusting could be untrusted. Therefore, it's humans, right? The only thing you can trust or distrust is another human. And so we are trying to do away with trust. We are trying to make it such that you don't have to trust other people, especially people who belong to a megacorp that is bound by law to prioritize quarterly profits over user health and safety and security. We're trying to make it so that you don't have to trust others with some of the most critical tools in your life, which is your computers.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the Twitter sphere right now and you're taking a look at the Twitter files, you can probably grasp there's been a big invasion of privacy and public transparency. There's been multiple journalists that have been exposing around, I think it was even before 2020, how involved the FBI and CIA and other three-letter agencies, how involved they've been with just completely manipulating and controlling Twitter and their policies. And so, if you're seeing that with Twitter, there's a high probability that Apple's also engaged with conversations and discussions with, a nation state. And so, it's pretty difficult for me to, look at Apple and even want to use their cloud services. They're actually pretty persistent too with letting you know when your cloud storage is completely filled, and there's the subscription-based model that you can choose. And for me personally, I just store it on an SSD drive, whatever my personal, certain personal information, whether it's photos and stuff like that. But I'm still not quite there. I mean, the convenience of using an iPhone and certain devices, it's, I think I've heard you as well say that you here and there you're using like an iPhone or maybe some more convenient device, because right now we're not at a point in society where we have these sovereign devices. Now I do see Purism. I've actually looked at their website and what they've been producing prior to even hearing about Star 9, but I really enjoyed the fact that they were, user privacy focused first. And so it's great to see that you guys are partnering with them. I was wondering, how would, as an individual, when I go to purchase, the Embassy, so you've got the Embassy One, correct me if I'm wrong, and then the Embassy Pro, and that's using the hardware that's built by Purism. Mm-hmm. Is there any way for us to really have transparency over there's backdoors within their hardware? Does that question even make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. Using computers in a sovereign way, provably, right? Like knowing for sure that what you are using, not only the hardware device, but the operating system and any piece of software, knowing for sure that it is completely secure all the way down to the metal and under your control and with no vulnerabilities or leakages or backdoors is impossible. It is actually impossible. You have to trust someone, probably multiple people along the way. The goal of us is to minimize trust. It's to make it such that you're not just sort of putting a blindfold on, crossing your fingers and trusting some mega corporation or 6 of them, right? That is a totally unacceptable trust model that everyone has adopted, and the consequences are coming. What we're trying to do is make it such that you can trust maybe a few people, right, who you actually have targeted, like individuals that you can say, I trust that person. And that person has their own trust model. In security, this is called the root of trust, right? It's about finding the hierarchy of trust all the way down to the base assumption that you are making. If you want something to be totally sovereign without trust, you have to do everything yourself. Right? You'd have to get the raw materials, you'd have to solder the motherboard, you'd have to make the chip, you'd have to write the operating system, you'd have to do whatever. In any of those things that you're not doing, you are trusting the person that did them, and you are trusting any people who have tested those things, right? So there are people out there who are capable of testing certain software, looking at source code and saying this is backdoored or this is not backdoored. There are far less people in the world who are capable of inspecting a chip to see if the chip itself at a certain layer is compromised. So that's the hardest part. And that will come in the distant future. Purism actually does quite a bit on this front, on the hardware front. Purism is really a hardware company. Yes, they make Pure OS, they make other software, but they are primarily a hardware company that is out to produce hardware that you can trust. And they're trying. That is not what Start9 does. Start9 is out trying to produce an operating system that not only you can trust, but you can actually use, right? Our goal is to produce secure, reliable, performant operating system software that is usable by the average person in order to administer a personal server. The reason we partnered with Purism is because they are taking on, the lift of trying to get the hardware itself secured. But this is a hard, almost impossible, I guess, problem to solve permanently and forever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have a more detailed understanding of the entire process of putting hardware and software together for computing devices. But something that came to mind in the midst of that was, like Stephen Livera has. I'm trying to remember the name of their. I think it's the Ministry of Nodes, where
it's Catan.
Catan, yes, yeah, okay. He. I know that he tests out a lot of different devices, and something that came to mind was that as we progress in the future, maybe there'll be a high demand of services where people are investigating and kind of poking and pricking at these different devices and hardware and whatnot, and trying to give reviews online through social media so that the public can see what's happening. But yeah, ultimately you are, kind of trusting. But I wonder if there would be like a new kind of industry that would, or one that's already existing, but it would just become more pronounced with a demand and kind of having integrity between hardware and software.
Mm-hmm. There's quite a bit that's done. It's not like these devices are being created in black boxes and then nobody in the world is paying attention and using them blindly. Like, there are watchdog organizations, there are highly competent individuals who test hardware, who test OSs, who test software, but it's not, there's a shortage of those people and organizations and those activities. but it's not like nothing is being done, right? Like, for example, given my knowledge, both on the business and supply chain side of things and on the developer code side of things, I feel very safe and private using like an Embassy Pro, which is made by Purism, which has Intel's management engine disabled in firmware, which is a known backdoor in all Intel chips. So any old MacBook, any old PC, anything that's running an Intel chip basically is inherently backdoored. We don't know to what extent information leaked, et cetera. There's a bunch of write-ups on stuff like this, and you're welcome to go do that research. But basically, we know that there's a backdoor built into Intel's management engine, which is in every Intel chip. Purism disables that in firmware for their devices. And so that is the only known backdoor that I'm aware of, or that others in my universe and circles are aware of, related to these devices, and it's been disabled. We wrote the software, the OS software, so I feel very confident about that. Maybe not to say that there's no bugs, not to say that it's perfect. We're always looking for and hoping people will spot bugs and vulnerabilities so that we can fix them. But we're not aware of any serious, vulnerability or security shortcoming. There's definitely no backdoor. I trust myself and my team to make stuff like that. Whether you trust me or not is up to you. But the code is open source, right? Or I should say source available before I piss off the hornets. But, the code is there for anyone to see and download and test and audit and change in any way they see fit. Nobody spotted anything. And we encourage people to audit it, right? It's not something we're trying to prevent, it's something we're trying to encourage. And so, yeah, I feel very safe and comfortable using my own device and operating system to do extremely private things from anywhere in the world on the device. And I don't think twice if somebody else is capable of seeing that, because I don't think they are. Somebody would have to provide any evidence whatsoever to demonstrate that what we have built does not work.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. We once again, the combo of Purism and this personal server, this operating system you guys are creating really excites me, and I look forward to watching your growth and seeing more interest in this and more demand and people being more caring of their personal information, because a lot of people don't give a shit at all. I've got family members, I've got friends, I've got acquaintances where all of their passwords are so simple to decipher, and they've got all of their login information on their notes pad and their iPhone, and they don't use a password manager clearly, or they don't use a VPN. I mean, with work computers, it's pretty much required, but and then the future is digital. It's a digital space. Your life is now intertwined with this, and you need to take precaution of that. And just so many times people consistently will say, I have nothing to hide. I'm clearly putting, things on the internet because I want to put it on the internet. But there's certain things that you may not even know is being revealed to others. And, I was going through your website and I really loved your about section, the mission, the values, the virtues, and the origin story. And I liked how you guys provided the four reasons privacy is necessary. And I was wondering, could you go through those 4 reasons and just kind of discuss it real quick? I mean, you kind of already did earlier, but I liked how you laid it out in that section of your website.
Yeah. And I wrote that, so hopefully I can pull it off the top of my head. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go visit the website. Let me try. I've
got it here too. So
I should absolutely be able to do this. Okay. So, why privacy is important. Okay. So these are probably going to be out of order from how they are on the website. So number 1 is privacy is an insurance policy against the future. You can rightfully say, all my direct messages, all my private documents, my finances, everything. It's like, I have nothing to hide. If all that stuff leaked, then I'd be fine, right? Today in America, yes, But what if that information leaked 30 years from now, after there has been a, dictatorial overthrow of the American government and blah, 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 and they outlaw anybody who has ever engaged with Taco Bell? And now you're an enemy of the state because you bought something from Taco Bell 30 years ago. This is a ridiculous example, but there are very real examples similar to that throughout history where you weren't an enemy today, but you are tomorrow. And if you had said those things publicly, that's one thing. Like if I posted on Twitter or Facebook, I love Taco Bell, and then later in the future that became illegal and I got in trouble, privacy ain't going to help you there. You didn't have privacy to begin with. That was a public statement, right? But if you had said that in a DM, in a direct message or in a private document, then it was private and should not harm you. So that's number one, is insurance policy against the future. Another one is that even young children who don't understand any of these concepts have a desire for privacy, right? It is part of our nature to want to be alone at times. I think where this comes from is the desire to avoid embarrassment, the desire to experiment with ideas or language or acts that you aren't confident in or that you're not sure are permitted. And so you want to experiment alone so that if they fail or it doesn't work out or whatever, everyone's not watching you. So private spaces are important for us to do our more fringe thinking and acts, right? And that's important for growth. Otherwise, you don't push the limits, push the envelope. You just stay in the safe space and everything gets boring. Another one is protection against extortion. Okay, so if your private information is being fed to all these different places, and there's a hack, okay, let's say Google Photos gets hacked, and you just happen to be storing a bunch of nudes on Google Photos, well, you can now be extorted for that. The hacker who got their hands on those photos also has your email, also has your family's emails, right? They can say to you, hey, if you don't pay me this amount of Bitcoin, I'm going to show these photos to everyone in your life, because Google had all of that information for them to do that, okay? So that's another one, is protection against extortion. And then the last, I believe, was just, no, what's the fourth?
They kind of blend in. So so promotes creativity. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So promotes creativity and experimentation by minimizing the risk of embarrassment, protects valuable information from theft and extortion, enables the diffusion of contrarian ideals and ideas, and number 4 is serves as an insurance policy against the future.
Number 3 is what I skipped.
Yeah. But so it kind of blends in with what you were talking about. It kind
of does, but yeah, I didn't nail that exactly. Number 3 is so that you can actually knowingly spread political opposition. Okay. This isn't insurance policy against the future. It's like, today I am going to say things to people who I know that those things are, against the current thing. They are against the status quo. But that is the reason of freedom of speech, right? Freedom of speech is not so you can say a bunch of things that everyone agrees with. It's so that you can say things that people disagree with. And I'm not talking about posts on Twitter. I'm talking about the ability to assemble, what do you call it? Like contrarian groups in private, right? Like I and others should be able to get together in private and discuss the shortcomings of the American government and how we plan to change them, knowing that the things we're saying would be viewed as revolutionary and potentially treasonous. Okay. I don't do those things for anyone listening to this. However, I should be able to. And it's important that those spaces exist and the technology that are there to protect that kind of speech, because without that kind of speech, power runs away with itself.
Yeah. Well said. This is definitely very important. Privacy is very important. Every time I talk to friends that are not in the space, the Bitcoin space, they kind of turn their head like, I don't really know. They don't hear that as often nowadays. So yeah, I look forward to seeing this available for businesses too, because for Bitcoin focused, startup companies or businesses that are going to, try to lead forward with their infrastructure, it's more difficult for them to structure their suite of operations using certain APIs and having to kind of go a more clunky route because they don't want to use these cloud services and they want to protect privacy and personal information from their clients. So having more businesses like Start9 that can provide that for the personal individual, but also for hopefully businesses in the future, that's going to be great because, working for a Bitcoin company, I see this firsthand and it's not easy, so we have to kind of go through different routes and take different pathways and make different decisions to, have integrity with privacy of clients and of individuals that kind of, it's a more go slow approach and not break things. So, yeah, I really look forward to these types of operating systems scaling out. And so I also have, we were just talking about BitBlock Boom right before we started to really engage in the conversation. I had purchased a Tonto node from Ronin Dojo, and I've been using it not as extensively as I would like, but I more and more progressively I'm using it more, and I'm going to start learning command line, and I've used their UI. And when I was speaking with them at the conference, they were, I actually just heard about Start9, but I also knew about Umbrel and their engagement as well, which is a relatively similar company, one of your competitors, I would say. And Ronin, so the Tonto node and Ronin Dojo, they stated to me that they didn't want to begin with having this operating system and suite of applications because it sacrificed privacy. And so I'm wondering if I'm assuming you do know Ronin Dojo and the Tonto node, and like what are they? How is that? Going through this operating system, how is that sacrificing privacy? Is it because you have these various different applications that potentially could, have some kind of bug or issue with their, like a software update?
Yep. So this is a very important thing you're bringing up that comes up a lot, actually. We field this type of question quite often. A lot of people will show up and say, well, I don't want to run all my server-side applications on the same box. I don't want to run Nextcloud and Synapse messaging and Vault Warden password management alongside my Lightning node, which is storing funds on it. Because you're intermingling data. Well, I want to be clear about this. The data is not stored in the same place. These things are very isolated in containers on the system. But what you're intermingling is they're all in the same box, okay? Physically speaking, they are living on the same piece of hardware. And so if anything malicious got onto that box, some sort of malware that was capable of taking advantage of some low-level security vulnerability that could then get access to other things on the system, then one thing infects everything, right? So there is this common stance where someone will say, keep all your Bitcoin stuff on one device, Bitcoin and Lightning stuff on one device, and then use another device for all your other stuff. I disagree with that stance. Not because I disagree that things should be segregated. I do. I disagree with where they've drawn the line. This isn't about Bitcoin and Lightning stuff on one device and non-Bitcoin and Lightning stuff on another device. That is a very arbitrary place to draw a line and actually doesn't make you more secure fundamentally, because say like I'm running 15 different Bitcoin and Lightning related services on one device. Any one of those during a software update could become malware, infect the system, and take all my money. You have not eliminated the security vulnerability. You've just minimized it by not including the other 15 services that are running on the other device, right? So yes, is running 15 services on one device more secure than running 30? Yes, because you've cut your attack surface in half. But you have not eliminated the vulnerability, right? It would be better, in my opinion, to run Bitcoin and Lightning and Nextcloud, 3 services on one device, than it would be to run 10 Bitcoin services on one device, because one is 1/3 the amount of the attack surface. So I disagree with where the line's being drawn. This isn't about Bitcoin stuff on one device and other stuff on another device. It's about maybe separating things based on the importance of the information, right? So things that are incredibly important to you, like your Lightning node because it has money on it, or Vault Warden, your password manager, because it has all your passwords. Maybe you should get just a couple of those services on one device. Like, all right, on this device, I'm just going to run Bitcoin, Lightning, and Vault Warden because it's like, that's super critical and I'm not going to install anything else on that device. Then on my other device, I install 15 other things where it's like, if it were to blow up and people were to get access to it, it's not a huge deal. That's what this is about. It's about minimizing your attack surface related to the things that are critical, and then caring a little less about the things that are non-critical. So it would be ideal for someone to run like 3 or 4 different servers, physical devices, and separate them according to these threat models. And the more important the data on a single device, the less things you should have running on that device, and the more diligent you should be about keeping it secure and being careful about software updates. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a nuanced conversation as opposed to this black and white rule that everyone wants it to be, because people like simple black and white rules, but it's just not. Okay, there is no just like poof, you're secure rule. Like if all your Bitcoin stuff is on one device and there's no other stuff, then you're secure. That's just a false sense of security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys, are you running on Tor?
Tor is available, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It also, so currently there's 2 ways to access your embassy and any of its services. You can access it over Tor using unique.onion URLs, mm-hmm. and you can access everything over .local LAN URLs.
Okay.
But obviously .local will only work when you are home or connected to the same local area network.
For people that don't know much about Tor, do you mind just explaining briefly why Tor is different than Google Chrome or Brave? I know Brave has been getting into the shitcoin area, but that browser compared to Chrome seems to be a little bit better when it comes to ad blockers and more of a privacy approach. But Tor specifically seems to have less or more of a latency issue compared to Chrome, but there's reasons for that. Would you mind
I'll dig into that.
Yeah.
Actually, real quick, I wanted to say one other thing about my previous point, because I just realized I left it out. Mm-hmm. When it comes to Embassy and Embassy OS, our product, you don't have to run anything, right? There is no privacy or security vulnerability related to this multiple service things, because you don't have to run more than one service. Nothing comes pre-installed. So anybody who says like, oh, you're using Start9, that's insecure because you're mixing your Bitcoin and other apps and you're running 20 of them, it's like, you don't have to do that at all. Mm-hmm. You can just install Bitcoin, hit start, and walk away, and now it's only running Bitcoin things, right? Mm-hmm. Or you could just install Nextcloud or just install Vault Warden. So it is a false and kind of malicious, actually, perception about our products that you sort of have to run all of this stuff, and oh my God, it could be insecure. You don't have to do anything. It's your computer. Nothing comes pre-installed. Yeah. So you can just run the exact same things that are running on any other plug and play device if you wanted. Okay, Tor. So Yes, your sort of framing of the Tor question actually illuminates a common kind of belief or even misconception that people have regarding Tor, which is that it's a browser. Tor is not a browser. There is a Tor browser.
Right.
That is a browser for browsing Tor. It's even more specifically, it is a browser that enables you to use the Tor network. Okay. Tor is not a browser. Tor is a network. It is a protocol and a network of computers. Any computer running the Tor protocol and an implementation called a Tor relay, and there are various kinds of relays, and I won't get too into the weeds here, is going to forward packets, or more layman term, just forward information around the world in a very particular way. And the way that Tor does it is as follows. When I make a request from my computer or phone or whatever, and I make that request over Tor, what I mean by a request is like I'm reaching out over the internet to get information or to send information, okay? To get or receive information is a request. I'm going to make a request out to the internet. When I do that over Tor, rather than reaching out to, let's say I want to get information from Google, okay? Rather than reaching out to Google servers directly and getting that information, instead what I do is I take that request that I was going to make to Google and I put it in a box. And then I seal that box and I write somebody else's address on it. I write your address on it. So instead of sending my package to Google, I take that package, I put it in a box, I close it, and I put your name on it and your address, okay? Then, not even, it's somebody else. Let's say party, is anybody else there with you? We'll call him Kyle. There's somebody named Kyle, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to take the box that's intended for Google and put it in a box that's addressed to Kyle. Then I'm going to take that box that's addressed to Kyle and I'm going to put it in a box, close it, and address that box to you, okay? So now I'm going to send you that box and you're going to go, ooh, a package for me. And you're going to open it up and you'll be like, oh, damn, it's not for me. It's for Kyle. So you're just going to take that package out and then forward it to Kyle. Kyle's going to open up that package and say, ooh, a package for me. And he's going to open it. He's going to go, damn, this isn't for me. This is for Google. And so he's going to take the package out and send it to Google. Google's going to open the package and go, aha, this is for me. And they're going to then return a response. And that response is going to be sent back through Kyle, back through you, and then ultimately to me. That's how Tor works. And each party, right, these boxes are encrypted. So it's like you can't open Kyle's box. I send you a box, you open yours, and you see Kyle's box, but you can't open it because you don't have the cryptography. You don't have the key to open that box. Only Kyle can open it. So you have no idea that thing is going to Google eventually. No idea. All you know is it's going to Kyle. For all you know, Kyle's the end of the road. It's actually intended for him as far as you're concerned. You don't know if there's more inside of it. This is called onion routing, what I just described. Okay, onions, because onions have layers. You peel back a layer and there's another layer, you peel it back. That's how Tor works. It's also how the Lightning Network works. The Lightning Network also does onion routing. In addition to onion routing, everything in Tor is end-to-end encrypted. So nobody can see the contents of the request except the intended party and me. Neither you nor Kyle has any idea what I'm asking from Google. Now, that's if I'm asking something from Google. Let's say I'm asking something from my own embassy. So I can go to the other side of the world, pull out my cell phone, and get data from my embassy in my home. And that's how it's happening. The request is being bounced around the world randomly to random people. It's ultimately hitting my embassy, getting the data it needs, and then is being shipped back around the world to my cell phone. End-to-end encrypted, onion routed, nobody in between had any idea that I was calling an embassy or had any idea what I was getting from that embassy. None. So it's completely private and anonymous communication over the internet at a distance to your own server in your own home. It really does. It's really brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, as you mentioned, the drawback is that it's incredibly slow and often unreliable. Requests can hang, they can fail. The network can be attacked, as it has been for the last 8 months or so. So it's not a great experience. It is a private and anonymous experience, but it's not fast and convenient.
Yeah. I think I recently saw that there was a crowdfunding or some kind of donation that was made to Tor to try to improve their protocol, since I've noticed they've been under attack as well, and so I hope that there's more resources that can be contributed to Tor. Are there any other that come to your mind? Any other similar protocols like Tor that are more prominent for people to use, or is Tor really the main one?
Tor is by far the main one.
Yeah.
There are other private and anonymous, and I put that in quotes, networking protocols.
Yeah.
I2P is one that people talk about, and even Bitcoin is capable of routing over I2P. But really, Tor is the dominant anonymous, private and anonymous networking protocol. We are working on something that we think will be a permanent solution to private and anonymous networking on the internet. At least to an extent. Something like Tor, we think, will always be necessary, not Tor itself, but something like Tor, onion routed, right? So onion routed strategies will always be necessary for extreme cases where you really are doing something, private that, and you're a high profile target too, right? Somebody is actively trying to snoop on you and you're doing something incredibly, we'll call it dangerous. You're going to end up needing something like Tor, no matter what is built, no matter what else is built. At least as of now, nobody has figured out a better way to route packets around the world than encrypted onion routing. That is the best idea anyone's ever come up with, as far as I'm aware. Mm-hmm. However, there are things that are just short of perfect, just short of totally private and anonymous for high threat models that can create a great user experience, really fast connections, reliable connections, private and anonymous connections, just not perfectly private and anonymous, right? It depends on your threat model. And because we've already built Tor and leveraged Tor, we can always keep it for those extreme circumstances. But we don't anticipate that most humans are going to be using Tor for their computing and networking needs in the future. We don't think that is going to be a very common thing to use. So if you want, I can get into a little bit about what our hypothesis is and what we're building towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so step one, and I have said very publicly on Twitter and elsewhere that 2023 for Start9 is the year of networking. That is our primary focus for the year by a pretty big leap, right? We are mostly doing networking this year, and there's a few other sort of priority 4 and 5 things that we're going to do. And the reason for this is because networking is what's killing people's ability to be able to use sovereign computing technology, to be able to use our products for their daily drivers, to really engage on a daily basis. The problem is Tor. It really is the heart of the problem for our products. And especially for businesses, people who consider these communications to be sort of mission critical on a minute-to-minute basis. They can't be dealing with slow and unreliable internet connections. So step one, phase one, which we're working on this quarter and hope to have done by the end of this quarter, is what we call ClearNet. ClearNet we define as DNS plus SSL. And what that means for layman is DNS means .com, .net. It's normal websites. Okay, like that's what DNS is. It's a way of registering human readable names like start9.com to IP addresses where those resources can be reached. SSL is HTTPS. It is the encryption that takes place for those communications, right? So that way, somebody listening, just observing this information flow can't read it. The combination of those two technologies is what we call ClearNet, and it is how 99% of the internet works, is over what we call ClearNet, which is DNS plus SSL. That's HTTPS start9.com, DNS plus SSL. We're implementing that for embassies by the end of Q1, which means that as an individual or a business, you will be able to go get a domain name, right? So I can go get a domain, matthill.dev, and assign it to my embassy or to one or more services on my embassy. For example, I could have my embassy would live at matthill.dev. My BTC Pay server store would live at store.matthill.dev. And my Matrix, chat server would be at chat.matthill.dev. And therefore, not only can I use my embassy just like a normal human being in a normal browser, but so can others, right? My friends, my family, my employees, my community, my organizations, whatever they are, can, instead of being all techie and weird, can just like go open up Firefox browser and visit chat.matthill.dev, create an account, and be chatting with me on a server that's in my home. So for anybody other than me, because I'm the server administrator, I have the server, I set it up, I did all of this. For anyone other than me, there's no difference from the normal internet. So talk about convenience, right? Like we literally are going to make the sovereign computing model and a personal server feel and look to almost everyone except the person running it, just like using any other website. So this is huge for businesses. This is when businesses are going to be able to adopt this, and it is when Start9 will adopt it for its own needs, right? We use embassies today. Start9 as a company uses our own personal servers as for certain company needs, but we can't use it for a lot of our needs because our needs are too mission critical and we need them to be performant to be relying on Tor for our daily needs. So once ClearNet is done, not only will Start9 be using embassies for all of its company needs, everything, from internal team chat to password management to document sharing and storage to our own Lightning node, everything. We're going to use it for everything, but so will other businesses. And we hope that others, including Unchained Capital, will adopt embassies as their server solution for company needs, as opposed to AWS and Slack and Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever you guys are using over there and paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month in SaaS subscription fees. Instead, you can buy a couple Embassy Pros and never pay another subscription fee for the rest of your lives and gain the additional benefits of self-hosting all that data so that it's not sitting on third-party clouds. It's a win-win-win. It's cost savings, it's privacy, it's security. It's actually more secure than using something like Google. This is a point that a lot of people miss that I actually want to harp on for a second here. It is often assumed that when you take control over your own data, that it is less secure than if you left it in the hands of Apple or Google. That is a frequent assumption that people make. And the reason that they make that assumption is under the following false logic. Is your gold bar more safe in your home, according to some security measures that you have, like a safe, or you've buried it in your backyard or whatever, or with an entire army of armed people in a locked vault in the middle of the desert? Most people will say that your gold bar is more secure when guarded by an army buried in the desert in a locked vault. The reason they say that is because of a couple of false assumptions. One is that army works for you and you can trust that army with your gold bar, and that they will give it to you anytime you ask for it, and that they won't ever steal it. Okay? That's false assumption number one. False assumption number two is that your gold bar is the only gold bar in that vault. Now, which is more secure? If that vault held all the gold on Earth, no army could defend it because it's too valuable. And I'm not talking about from outside attack. No army could defend it because somebody in that army is going to defect. Somebody in that army is going to betray, going to be compromised, and going to steal it themselves, right? When you house everyone's data in one server, it is inevitable that that server will be hacked, probably by an insider. Your gold bar is way safer, buried in the backyard in some safe that only you know about, et cetera, than it is in some vault somewhere else. And history has shown this over and over and over again. The reason people don't do it is because they don't trust themselves. It's a self-esteem issue. The reason people don't want to keep their own wealth, don't want to take control of their own stuff, is because they don't think that they're competent enough to do it. So they hand it to someone else and pretend that it's safe. It's a psychological trick people do to avoid facing the fact that they just don't trust themselves. They pretend that it's safer somewhere else. It saves them from the embarrassment to themselves. Now, people do take custody of things, values, if the tools are really good, like if they feel competent to do it, right? So for example, if there was some safe that you could buy that was like, hey, this thing literally has a futuristic force field around it. And if you could leave it sitting on your front lawn with gold bars in it, and nobody could possibly take it because the tech is just that good, people would do it because they don't have to trust themselves at that point. They trust the technology. That's what we're trying to do. We are trying to equip people with technology that will give them the confidence to store their own valuables. And in this case, data is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That to re-highlight the current status of people not trusting themselves. I mean, that it's not hard for you to take control of your own wealth. I mean, and kind of push past that psychological barrier, but maybe that's just coming from, just my own subjective perspective. But I mean, when I got into the Bitcoin space, I had originally relied on a third party. And then once I started to learn more about Bitcoin, I began to realize that I need to take control of this myself, or everything that I've just, everything that I've just invested in could be, stolen from me. And so maybe if I had known that, I need to hold my own keys prior to getting into Bitcoin. Well, I did know, but I kind of, I didn't see the urgency at first. And then once I had it in my possession, well, technically it was in the possession of, it was a Bitcoin paper IOU, but, that sense of urgency kind of kicked in, and it's really not that hard. The tools and resources are out there right now for people to do this. Maybe 6-7 years ago, there wasn't as much information for people to do that, within the ecosystem. But now it's like, going on the topic of Unchained, there is this combination of being, having the self-esteem to do this, but you also can be, we're a little pat on the back with your self-esteem. It's like, we're here to help you and take control of this, and then consistently provide you with support and resources with holding your own keys in a multi-sig fashion. So, pushing past that barrier of, psychologically becoming more confident with hosting your own data and holding your own private keys. I think that's going to be a generational thing. I think I've heard you say that too, is that there's older generations that have, like, their future is pretty much at the last few moments, and they're not really they don't really have either the drive or the mental model to be able to break through their existing mental models. They don't have that kind of, they don't have the ability to really push through and kind of go through this paradigm. So I think I agree with you. I think it was on, I forgot what podcast you were stating that on, but I do agree that I think it's going to be a generational thing. So, providing this information to millennials or even younger generations is really important. And I think that's going to, I think it's definitely happening on multiple fronts. So, yeah, I'm excited to see that this is, scaling out and giving the opportunity for people to realize that you've got help to be able to do all of this. And here are the benefits on why you should do it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, our chat channels are full of people just asking questions, trying to wrap their head around, how things work, not just from a conceptual kind of broad perspective, but literally just pushing the buttons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is new tech and it's new ideas. We don't have to help Bitcoiners as much understand the concepts, but they still run into practical, challenges that they need help with. And we're there for them, like that's a big part of what we do. And our sort of identity as a company is very much we're here to help you. We know that the tech alone will not drive adoption. It's not enough for the technology to exist. People need to, make the decision to take the plunge, and they will usually only do that if somebody, like you said, is sort of holding their hand or patting them on the back and answering their questions. And this is fine, right? That's like totally expected. What we have found by and large is that, the older generations are just less likely to adopt new technology. I don't think that that's a condemnation of them or any kind of like specific to that generation. I think that's just humans. The world makes sense to you at a certain point, and the last thing you want to do is have it not make sense again. You mostly just want to stick with what you know at a certain point. I do think it's a good practice for people in life to remain open-minded and try new things and avoid this sort of, ossification of the mind. But eventually it happens to everyone. I don't know anyone who's made it to their final days, willing to challenge their metaphysical beliefs. At some point, you're just like, get out of here, you young whippersnapper. I know how the universe works. Even if I'm wrong, I don't care. I'm done with that kind of thinking. I'm sure I'll get there at some point. So yeah, we focus on really anyone who shows up,
mm-hmm.
With a desire to understand and to adopt. We don't discriminate. We got a lot of people across all generations actually in our channels that are really doing well with this technology. And it's a testament to an extent to what we built, not just our ability to help, but like it does work. It does make sense. Like you can use this. It is quite good. We're very proud of what we've built. We acknowledge that there's a long way to go before it's sort of like close your eyes, push a button, and it does everything you want. But it is much better than you think. Most people are quite surprised actually when they set up our stuff. Their reaction is very, very often like, wow, that actually worked. I didn't expect that to work. And it's quite easy. And that's when they get sort of addicted. They catch the bug and then they become fans. And we don't have many dissatisfied people. I don't think we've ever had anyone who didn't walk away saying, wow, that's pretty cool.
Do you have any testimonials from people that have purchased an Embassy, one of your products? And what's one of the most, I would say one of the most not surprising, but useful cases in which like someone dealt with like maybe a honeypot data hack, and have you had any of your clients reach out and say like, hey, this is like some kind of horrible exposure to their data occurred, and they've been using it for some time, using Embassy for some time. Have you had like a consistent amount of feedback from people that maybe have been harmed with data exposures within, honeypot cloud servers? And
over the past couple of years, there's been a few instances where third-party computing, we'll call it cloud computing, has come to the forefront of the news. Most recently, there was the LastPass hack.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of people show up after the LastPass hack, just being like, it never occurred to me that these passwords were vulnerable, Now, to be fair, the passwords, it appears LastPass was telling the truth about the passwords being encrypted. However, it appears that they were not fully forthcoming with the type of encryption being used, and that it is far less than people thought, meaning that their passwords could be brute forced in a matter of weeks, as opposed to like 30,000 years or something that LastPass was claiming. And so if you were part of the LastPass hack and you didn't immediately start changing all your passwords, within a few weeks' time, you could have become vulnerable, which is just like this terrible situation to put somebody in, where it's like the clock is ticking. You better go save all your stuff because it's time consuming. And you were paying for that, it's like, this isn't what I paid for. I didn't anticipate having to do this. So we've had a few people show up from LastPass. We had a lot of people show up when Trump was censored from Twitter. Totally different type of third-party vulnerability. There's privacy and there's censorship. That's sort of the other side of the coin. And censorship is becoming more and more commonplace. So anytime there's some big censorship story in the news or some privacy breach or hack in the news, then yes, we get people who show up. I don't have any like prominent case studies to share, like, Bob showed up and this is what happened to him. But we generally have a flow of people showing up being like, hey, I heard that thing got hacked, or that's not secure. And how do I avoid becoming collateral damage when this happens again in the future? And our response, and what I tell everyone, is like, you don't have to do all this at once. That's a big misconception that prevents people from adopting anything new, is the perception of change, right? How big of a change is this going to running a Embassy and self-hosting your own data? How big of a change is it? It's nothing. It's negligible. It's an hour of your life. It's nothing, right? You get a device, you plug it in, it takes 10 minutes or less to set up, and 30 minutes later, you're running a cloud file storage, and you upload your first picture to your first server. Done. Take a break. Don't do anything else for a month. Let that sink in, right? Like, you don't have to do all this right away. I still use Google. I still use Google Drive. I've literally been building a company that is designed, whose clear stated objective, one of them, is to make Google Drive disappear at some point in the future because it's insecure and expensive and yada yada, and I still use it. That doesn't make me a hypocrite. It makes me realistic about processes rather than snapping your fingers and expecting everything to change, right? Like, you don't just decide, you don't just identify a better way of doing things and then wake up the next day doing them all 100%. Like, that's just incredibly unrealistic. You have to work towards your goals, right? I know our generation wasn't really taught that, right? We're the instant gratification generation. We were taught that if we want it, we get it, and it poof appears type of stuff, but it's not how it works. And so I don't even hold myself to the standard of, everything. My ideal way of using computers is the way I'm using them today. I don't do that because I can't do that because we haven't built it yet. We haven't built the technology to make that possible yet. So now we have some huge, huge milestones coming that not only will Start9 as a company be able to do this for pretty much everything, but me as an individual, right? So we have Nextcloud, which is a massive and great service coming online probably today. If not today, then tomorrow. So like immediately, that really solves the problem of remote data storage and syncing. Calendar, contacts, data storage. It's basically like Google Workspace, but self-hosted, right? It's not just one thing. It's like this huge, huge application that can do all this stuff. And it does it in a very intuitive, quality way. It's a really, really good piece of software.
You're saying Nextcloud specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Nextcloud's fantastic. It is used by enterprises around the world. There are big companies that use Nextcloud.
Yeah, I've used it.
And individuals. Now, it's not as good as Google Workspace from a user experience standpoint. Nextcloud doesn't have the kind of funding that Google has, but it is really usable, right? It's not perfect, but it's like if you can't use Nextcloud, then sovereign computing isn't for you. Like that, you know what I mean? You have to be willing to put up with some minor degree of like thinking and effort if you want to be free. It's like it just doesn't get handed to you. Nextcloud's good enough to use. That's my assessment.
I don't think it requires any. It's pretty easy to use, in my opinion. It's very easy to use.
Yep. So now that we have Nextcloud, there's very few things left that are needed on Embassy OS for someone to literally eliminate third parties from their computing life. The problem still is networking. I will be using Nextcloud over Tor, which is going to be awful, right? I might put up with it because it's important to me, but most people won't, and I don't blame them for that. It's pretty awful over Tor. Works great over LAN. The .local is screaming fast because it's not even going over the internet. You're syncing everything locally. But very often you're not home and you still want your stuff to sync and you still want it to be available. So you would have to use Tor. So networking, again, is like the elephant in the room that is preventing me, Start9, and everybody else in the world from adopting in earnest this technology. So back to the networking conversation, because I think that's what I was on, and then we spun off on some tangent. But step one of the year of networking is ClearNet, what I described before, the ability to use your embassy or any of its services on a .com, .net, whatever domain, including with HTTPS, fully encrypted, etc. What you are giving up if you do that is the privacy and anonymity that you were getting when you were using Tor and local. Because now you're part of the network, you're part of the internet, right? You're part of the normal internet, the ClearNet, which means that your DNS provider and your registrar knows that you're running these things. Your ISP is going to be able to see what you're running. It's okay though for a lot of people, right? Like this depends on your threat model. If the reason you are using an embassy is because you want to be invisible, you want to be dark, you want everything that you're doing to be invisible, private, secure, anonymous, etc., you won't use ClearNet. You will continue to use Tor. But if you're a business, you're not trying to be dark. You literally want people to see stuff, right? Like you want to host your website. You want to have people join your community chats. You want people to view your blog, etc. Those are not private things. Those are public things. And so you can choose to host those things on ClearNet if you want. Or if you're an individual who doesn't care that your domain registrar and ISP know you're running Nextcloud on a personal server. Like, I don't care, right? I will probably run my Nextcloud instance on docs.matthill.dev or something like that. And I don't really care because that's not incriminating. They can't see what I'm doing with it. They can't see any of the data. They can't take it. They can't censor me. They can't delete it. They can't turn it off, nothing like that. All I'm exposing is that I happen to be running Nextcloud in my home. No big deal. right? Like that doesn't bother me. If it did, I wouldn't put it on ClearNet and I'd run it over Tor. So it depends on your threat model. Secondly, what we're doing, so sort of phase 2 of the year of networking, this will be the second half of this year, we will be implementing what we believe to be the sort of permanent solution to networking on the internet. I guess I shouldn't say permanent because who knows what the future holds, but the medium-term solution for how the internet is going to work. And it is roughly summarized by the concept of hole punching, right? More specifically, hole punching through port prediction. Both technical terms, so let me break it down to as simple as I can for non-technical listeners. What this means is that I have a device in my home and I have a device in my hand, my cell phone, right? And I'm not at home. So I'm over here at work and there's a device in my home. How does my cell phone and the device in my home find each other? How does the device in the home and my cell phone communicate? The way that we're going to do it is by introducing a third party here, a third server, okay? And this third server, you can call it a discovery server, is the most common name that these third party servers go under. You could run this. Like you don't need to use somebody else's server. This could be your server, but it is another server. It's another device. So you have your cell phone, your embassies in your home, and now there's some other server up here. And this other server has to be publicly addressable. Publicly addressable means that it can't be behind a NAT, a network address translator. It can't be behind a router, basically. It needs to be publicly addressable with a static IP, right? So like when you're a business and you use Comcast Business or something like that, they give you static IPs. If you get a VPS on like Amazon, web on AWS or on DigitalOcean or on Heroku or on any kind of like, rent a server in the cloud platform, Google Cloud, et cetera, you get a static IP. What a static IP means is that anyone can go anywhere in the world and plug that IP address into their browser or ping it from the command line and it will resolve. Okay. Yes, you can set up all sorts of firewalls and stuff like that to make sure that it's secure, but basically it's publicly addressable. It can be called without any fancy networking techniques. Okay. So once you have that server sitting up here, what happens is the device in my home, the embassy, dials out to that thing. That thing cannot dial into my embassy. It can't call my embassy because my embassy is behind my router. It's protected by my home. It would need to be connected to my Wi-Fi, right, in order to dial it in. So it can't dial in. This is a good thing. It means your home is secure. It's why the devices in your home can't be reached. But this thing in my home can dial that thing because it's publicly addressable. It's sitting out there. Anyone can call it. So the device in my home calls out to that thing and it holds that connection open. It opens up a socket and it holds it open. It's a TCP connection. Now my cell phone also dials out to that thing, okay? And each of us have an ID. So the device in my home would be ID 123 and my cell phone would be ABC. I'm just making this up. So embassy is 123, cell phone is ABC. They both dial out to this third-party server and they register these IDs. Now, let's say my cell phone wants to call the device in my home. All I have to do is call this server and say, hey, I'd like to talk to device 123, please. And the server will say, okay, it's literally the telephone switch from back in the day. It's like, I call it and say, hey, I'd like to talk to device 123. And this thing says, okay, 1 second. And it uses that open TCP connection that's already there to call in and say, hey, device 123, give me a IP address and a port that you can be reached at temporarily. Give me a temporary address, not a permanent one because you can't do that. You can do a temporary one. And so the embassy will be like, okay, I can be reached at IP address, blah, 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 at port blah for the next 3 minutes. Okay. And it tells the server this. The server then tells me, my cell phone, hey, that person you're trying to reach, device 123, here's its temporary phone number. Here's its temporary contact information. And I'm like, thank you. And now I cut out the third-party server and my cell phone dials the embassy directly at that temporary information. So it gets through my router because it knew to do that in that moment. For a few seconds, it opens up and says, okay, I can be dialed at this IP and port for a few seconds. And now I can call that device. This also involves under the hood something called UPnP, which I won't get into here. It's a router networking protocol that almost all modern routers are capable of doing. So this will work. And that's it. So now what happens is anytime I want to contact my embassy, all I have to do is reach out to a third-party server. This third-party server will exchange some temporary address information, and now I can call my device directly. So now I can be anywhere in the world talking directly to a device in my home using standard TCP IP networking protocols, which means it'll be lightning fast. Wow. It'll just be a lightning fast peer-to-peer connection. This is how multiple things already work. Lightning Labs came out with something called LND Connect, which uses this strategy. There is SyncThing. SyncThing is a data syncing protocol that uses this strategy. IPFS, which is a global data storage network and protocol, uses a form of hole punching. We refer to this whole thing I just described as hole punching. You're punching a hole in a gnat to get through it, basically. There's things like Impervious that are attempting to use something like this. Hole punch. So I don't know if you've heard of Keat. Keat is this like video chat. It's this peer-to-peer video chat application. Uses a protocol called hole punch. And the protocol is called hole punch because it does hole punching as its primary activity. Also uses this. So there's a lot of things that are currently using this strategy to connect devices in a peer-to-peer manner. And it works really, really well. So we are not going to be like rolling our own solution. There's already ways to do this that have existed for a long time. What we are going to be doing is sort of combining them in a unique way that is, that works for us and for our use case. But by the end of 2023, you will be able to not only communicate with your embassy and any service that's running on your embassy over a ClearNet domain like matthill.com or something like that, but you will also be able to communicate directly with your embassy in total privacy using this hole punching strategy. There's one caveat to this. The reason why I said Tor is never going to go away as an option. The one caveat to everything I just described is that this third-party server is a trusted third party in this transaction. You could run it yourself. Now there's no trusted third parties, but that would require you to set up another server, probably in the cloud somewhere, and get a static IP address. Okay. Which a lot of people just aren't going to do. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to trust someone who's already running one of these servers and use them as the rendezvous point in order to make the direct connection. That's the trade-off here, is that you either need to go spend $10 a month to go get a third-party VPS and run your own discovery server, or you need to use somebody else's for free, but now you're trusting them. You're not trusting them with your information and data. You're trusting them with your anonymity, right? Because if my embassy dials out to the discovery server and my cell phone dials out to the discovery server, this guy knows the IP address of both of these things, and it knows that we're trying to talk to each other. It doesn't know what we're talking about. It can't see the information. It's not an intermediary for every communication. It's not a relay, but it does know that we are talking. It can conclude, hey, Matt is talking to his embassy right now. It knows that.
So it's best for the individual to buy their own VPS.
The ideal scenario is that you are running your own discovery server and using it to connect to your embassy. Yes.
And you could just probably buy that on Amazon. Would Start9 start?
No.
Wouldn't.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Okay. Our goal as a company is to never be a trusted third party.
Yeah.
Even if you can dump us. Well, like we are right now, right? Like when you use an embassy today, you are trusting us to an extent.
Right.
We wrote the software, et cetera, et cetera. But like our goal is to not be. Our goal is to ultimately become irrelevant to this entire system. But that's really hard to do. And it's going to take us basically forever to do it. You know, it's just this long-term goal that we have to become irrelevant in our own company and technology. But we don't want to be taking steps to make ourselves more relevant. Like we don't want to become a hosting provider. Like I don't want to be running VPS farms, right? Where you can pay us $10 a month to host your discovery server on our servers that are sitting in some bunker in the desert. The reason we don't want to do that is not because it's not a good business model. It's fine. And we could probably make money doing it, assuming that there was sufficient demand. This is basically what AWS was built on. Like Amazon Web Services is the only profitable arm of Amazon, I'm pretty sure. And that's all they fucking do is rent servers to people and provide dashboards for them to use those servers. This is massive business, and we could definitely get some of that business. The problem with that is that we are now objectively sitting in a position where we could spy on users, which would mean the next knock on our door is the NSA. Right? Like when the NSA and FBI or whoever shows up to our door, because believe me, they will eventually show up, I want my response to them to be, I got nothing.
Right.
I can't help you. I wish I could. I really do, but I can't because we're not in the middle of anything. We're not operating any third-party servers that people use. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. Like, hey, I don't know anything. Literally don't know anything. But if we're operating these third-party servers and they show up, they could force me under a gag order to start collecting information on people and give it to them, which I don't want to do.
Right. Yeah.
I'm willing to forego the business opportunity to save my own integrity. And, you know, ultimately, we are a business and we want to make money, and I think we will. I think we have a good business model, actually. We might never be Apple or Google or anything like that, but we can make a good, big business here. And I want to make our investors a lot of money. I want to make myself a lot of money, but we will never do that at the expense of why we're really here, right? Which is to implement a computing model that will allow my great-grandchildren to remain free. That is like why I'm here. It's why everyone at the team is here. And if we can make some money along the way, great. But we're never going to do anything that compromises the end game, which is freedom for my great-grandchildren. I'm out of luck. My children are probably out of luck, but we might be able to get it back for our great-grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. Future societies will definitely thank you and look back and realize that that's a low time preference mission and vision that you're enabling and keeping intact. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to see. And, yeah. And we still have some freedoms, and our children still have some freedoms. I know you were saying your great grandchildren, but, at least, yeah, the current computing scenario is,
I'm free. I'm pretty free. I don't go about my daily life feeling like I'm in shackles. However, that is partially the intent. The shackles are not meant to be felt. At a deeper level, we are not free. We do not live in a free world right now. The fact that we don't feel that acutely on a moment-to-moment basis is part of the reason that it became possible, right? It's why the current model of slavery works, is because the walls are somewhat invisible, right? Until you've seen them.
Yeah.
Once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. It's like, oh shit, I didn't know. And it's largely based on money, right? Like that's Bitcoin's whole premise here is that, fiat money and control over the money supply is a highly effective means of curtailing freedoms and in fact, outright implementing a slave-based society without, at the same time, even people realizing it. So when I say out of luck, I don't mean that I'm walking around miserably with shackles on. I just mean that this isn't the right model. Mm-hmm. We don't have the right model of human society right now. And in fact, I would argue that because the costs are hidden, they are allowed to grow unbounded, and eventually the debt will be called in. So in other words, rather than having an actual physical, acutely perceived slave society where individuals are just discontent and periodically engage in revolutionary activities that cause the power structure to change periodically. Instead of that, what we've done is, because the new model hides the costs and the risks, we basically aren't fighting back. And so it's getting worse and worse and worse, but we're not directly experiencing it. So instead of having this like constant turmoil, what you have is a giant collapse, right? It just quietly gets worse and worse and worse until the whole thing explodes. That's the kind of situation we're in right now. And it's starting to explode, right? When I say, and then it just explodes, I don't mean like over the course of 5 minutes. Explosions, collapses from a historical standpoint take place over many years. But I actually believe that we are in the middle of a collapse right now. Like if we were a building, if we were a skyscraper, we're about 1/3 collapsed right now. And it is in fucking free fall. However, it doesn't necessarily feel like that to most people on most days, because free fall, when it comes to history and politics, is years, right? Like it's years. You don't experience it on a minute-to-minute basis. But I absolutely believe that the global financial system, and therefore most human societies, are in free fall collapse right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's what I mean when I say I'm out of luck, my children are out of luck. There's no stopping this free fall. It's going to collapse all the way to the fucking ground. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to do is get the next one going up.
Right.
While this one is falling, so that people can jump over and out to a safe haven. And then by the time this thing is done falling, there might even be a decent sized building waiting for the future.
Yeah, and you're specifically referring to the monetary system, the traditional monetary system.
I believe that is the biggest crack. But again, what we are doing here, right, I believe is control over information is what we're talking about. It just so happens that money is a form of information. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But money is not the only kind of information. There is a broader war than just money. Money is really exciting to people because, it can result in wealth or loss of wealth, which it's a very feverish, and there's a lot of emotion involved. It's also a focal point of both power incumbents and upstarts. It's a focal point. It's like money is a very important battleground. Let's put it that way. It's like a critical battle in the war for information, but it is not the war. The war is information. Mm-hmm. And so information systems at large is what the new building is that I'm talking about. So when I say this building is collapsing, I don't just mean the financial system. Mm-hmm. I mean, the information system is collapsing, and we need to put up a new information system that works for everything, including and especially money.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Alongside getting into Bitcoin, prior to getting into Bitcoin, so I'm almost 30 years old. Back in, when COVID began, and there was like the George Floyd riots, and there was a lot of commotion going on. I had lost my job around that time, and that at that specific time, that's where something switched for me in my mind. I started to realize there was a lot of uproar and repetitive chanting from everybody around me, saying certain things, some kind of political ideology, but it didn't seem like it was a critical thought. It wasn't a well-processed thought, something impactful to say that was, analyzed and written about, like people were just kind of regurgitating information and opinions, and it just became more and more obvious to me. And so for a long period of time, not for a long period of time, but in the midst of all of that happening, I was starting to just adapt and figure out where my career was going to go. Eventually it led me to Bitcoin, and I'm very grateful to be getting into this space. And I realized the impact of our monetary system being corrupted and controlled and manipulated by a small group of people. But now, more and more as I got down into a more granular aspect of our money system, the history of money and Bitcoin overall, I did realize, I was like, well, it's not just your money. It's not just your wallet. It's also people's ability to creatively express themselves, and to be able to do that, you need to have an open sea of information that's not critiqued and just completely channeled by a small corporate tech company or a third letter agency. And it's very, very important for people to understand that. And I was very pessimistic at first, back in early 2020. I've grown to be more optimistic. I am a little worried that it's not going to happen soon enough, or maybe fast enough. But at the same time, should these innovations happen very, very quickly, I don't know if there would be even, some kind of ripple effects of harm. I think regardless of whether it happens quickly or not, there's going to be some pain. But yeah, I very much agree and hear what you're saying. It's very important to develop and put Bitcoin in the forefront of people's minds and for people to understand, but then also like give some kind of light a fire under people's asses to realize that you should be in control of your information if it's going to be on the web. So I very much agree with that. Yeah.
So this really comes home for people under the following. Very, very few people in this world can assess the current state of a system, understand how that state came about. This is history, study of history, in order to then predict where it's going. Okay, very few people are capable of this sort of process of thought, let alone the amount of effort and diligence it takes to get it right. Right? To know where things are going, you have to know how we got to where we are, and you have to know where we are. You have to understand the current state of the system, which itself is a rabbit hole of study. And so what happens is everyone basically just resorts to the moment and the circumstance of their own lives, right? As the sort of the truth of things. And while they might make broad claims about where something is going, they actually can't deduce or explain why. There's no real logical explanation. It's more of just a feeling. I feel like things are blowing up or something like that. And so everyone forgets, and this is where what I talk about sometimes, everyone forgets where this is going. When I say this is an information war, people seem to blank out that machines operate on information. And so they forget that this is a physical war, right? Like even in most of this conversation, we're talking about data. We're talking about photos and text files and text messages and group chats and money. This is all virtual stuff. None of this stuff is in your room. It's all digital. Okay. However, the things that are in your room are more and more being operated by digital systems. Okay, I'm talking about devices here. I'm talking about smart thermostats and smart light bulbs and door locks and those creepy fucking robots that Boston Dynamics is putting out that can do flips and shit like that.
This aspect scares the shit out of me. It's
but
smart,
this is what I'm
devices.
saying people blank out on is they keep thinking about what we're doing as protecting your photos and emails. It's not about that. This is about control over the robots. Okay. Like, who's going to control these fucking robots 10 years from now? Your car. Who's going to drive your car?
Well, everybody, I'm in the Austin region. I see Teslas all the time, and it looks nice to be able to own a Tesla. But for me, like, I haven't dug into the software of Tesla.
It's closed source.
That's what terrifies me. It's like,
their car. Not your keys, not your coins. Tesla are not your car. You are literally driving around in Tesla cars, and they belong to Tesla because they can drive anywhere they want at any time.
Most people would think that's crazy to me to be that skeptical, but when you understand software and you understand what we've been talking about, it's not improbable for this stuff to happen.
No. I mean,
we already know.
It's not a matter of probability. This is happening.
Yes.
It's already happening. It is possible for Google today to turn the heat up in your home.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God.
The question is, have they done this yet? That's what you're saying but it's like, look, name a time in history when it was possible for somebody in power to use a weapon and then they didn't use it. Like, it's just a matter of time before these things are actually used, right? Like, but they're already built. They're already done. When you put a Nest camera in your home, or you put a doorbell, right, or a thermostat that's connected up to the clouds, like, literally somebody at Google can, like, turn up the temperature on your home, lock your doors, right? And it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me, and extremely scary. And so that's what this is about, that's the race that's taking place here, is we have to build a new model of computing such that individuals can control devices at a distance before there's too many devices proliferating our lives to implement real physical slavery. Okay, like, that's
right. Yeah.
When your entire home can literally lock and change its temperature and monitor you physically, you're fucked. Good luck during the next pandemic, right? Like, lockdowns will take on a whole new meaning. This isn't like hey, you have to stay in your home. This is you're staying in your home because you literally can't get out. And if you break one of your windows and try to escape your home, it's going to be on camera and a drone will visit you shortly, right? Like, this is where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not quite there yet, but I mean,
no, of course not.
But we're progressing into that.
That's the race that I'm talking about, though, is that check this out. I want smart door locks. I want a smart thermostat. I want a camera. I want a drone. I want all of these things. I just want them to be under my control. I don't want them to be remote controlled by Google or the US government. So that's what we are racing towards. That's what Start9 is doing. That is our reason for existence. It is our mission, is to make it possible. Because right now it's not possible. It is possible for Google to turn up the temperature in your home at a distance. It is not possible for you to turn the temperature up at a distance. So we're trying to make it possible for you to do the same thing that Google can currently do, so that people will do that as opposed to Google. And then the future is up to people to decide for themselves. We can't make people adopt our technology, but we can build the technology and give them a chance.
Yeah. There's one quote that springs to mind that I watched in a Joe Rogan episode. It was, I forgot his name, who he was interviewing, but it was this gentleman that used to work for some tech company. I think it might have been Google. And he's now he's not working for Google. He's working for like an organization that's providing like or promoting ethical technology. I'm trying to remember his name, but he was in a documentary on Netflix too, that was bringing awareness to all of this. And it's called The Social Dilemma. One of the main characters within The Social Dilemma. And so he, a couple years after this documentary came up, he went on Joe Rogan and he talked about these pathways, these three in a going down like a bowling alley. You've got the right bunker that essentially could be AI centralized, just absolute slavery control by a small group of, federal governments, nation states. And then on the left side, you have decentralized chaos. Mm-hmm. You have all these tools that can be provided for the common citizen, every single class of citizens. But it's just absolute decentralized chaos. And we want to make it somewhere in the middle of that, where we're kind of still controlling having these layers of freedom for every human being. But also, I don't know what you think about that outlook.
Yeah, I got a thought on it. I think it's an oversimplification that ultimately, if interpreted wrongly, could basically lead to the right bunker. Because one of my favorite quotes is, in any compromise between food and poison, only death can win. You don't compromise on principles if you want to live, right? So when that analogy is presented, right bunker, left bunker, we need somewhere in between, that could be interpreted by somebody as being like, well, yeah, like some government is good, right? But if you view that as poison, then it ultimately is going to lead to the right bunker. You cannot counteract evil. It feeds only off of your willingness to let it exist. It has no life force of its own. So you have to be uncompromising, completely uncompromising on principle. So I'm never a middle person, never. I understand that the middle exists. I understand it's where you land in general. But the second you shoot for the middle, you end up in the right bunker. You end up under somebody else's boot. So you should shoot for absolute, uncompromising individual freedom is what I go for. Knowing that individuals will naturally form organizational structures, call them governments at various scales, that are there doing good things, right? Like I'm not against government as a concept. I'm against government at scale where the governed don't even know their governors, where you have no ability to talk to them or anything like that, where there's huge disconnection, right? As society scales, the type of government needs to scale with it, right? My family is a communist organization. I literally mean that. I mean that. Like
I've heard that quote from Nassim Taleb. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know where
your family is a communist, your friends are socialists, you treat your business partners as capitalists and so on.
The type of government, that's what I'm saying, is that people want to just apply like a blanket type of government to all of society and at all scales. And it doesn't happen like that. Individuals naturally form organizations and government structures. It's just a natural phenomenon. You don't need to plan for it. You don't need to put it in place. Like one of our two t-shirts that we have says "Order from Chaos" on it.
Jose is wearing it right now.
And I believe that, right? Like that is how things work. Order naturally arises from chaos, meaning you don't need to build order. All you need to do is fight for chaos and order will just happen naturally. It's an emergent property, right? And when I say chaos, I mean the primordial chaos.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not talking about like violence in the streets chaos. I'm talking about power at the edge of the network chaos. I'm talking about the outright and full empowerment of the individual. They will then grant some of that power naturally to organizational structures voluntarily as they see fit. That's what we are shooting for, philosophically and politically speaking. I believe that technology is the primary driving force of politics and history. And so I have chosen to fight on the battleground of technology, right? Because technology determines what kind of structures and actions are available to individuals. And then based on the availability of those structures and actions, you will arrive at political structures. So, for instance, I do not believe that the emergence of the modern nation state was a mistake. This wasn't like a let's go back in time and correct our errors and maybe we won't end up with authoritarian governments. I believe it was unavoidable. I believe that the form of government that we have today was the natural, emergent, free market consequence of the technologies available to the human race. I don't think there was any other way to do it. Because society had to scale. Right? Scale is inevitable. If you're a successful business, you're going to get more and more customers. How do you scale? How do you scale your organization is of extreme importance. And until now, until very recently, actually, the only effective way to scale human society was to centralize power. That was it. If you didn't do that, you literally got crushed in war by a society that did centralize power. So as a means of survival, you had to centralize power as much as possible as a society, as a country, in order to be effective in war. Right? World War II proved this. It was the climax, I would argue, of the heyday of the nation state. It was when whole countries mobilized their entire economies, their entire school systems and economies, everything was mobilized for total war. And the countries that could do this the best were the most effective in that war. Resources also played a large role in determining the outcome of that war. But first and foremost was the ability to galvanize your populace. So propaganda was sort of perfected during that war. Well, it was perfected during the Cold War, but it really came of age in World War II, with Hitler being the master of propaganda, and that all the other countries learned from him how to do it and have been doing it ever since. But that was how you survived and won in an industrial society, was the centralization of power for the total mobilization of resources towards a common goal. That's how you won in the industrial era. We're now in the information era, and we are applying industrial era strategies to try to flourish and win as individuals, as businesses, and as nation states. Even our schools are still organized around industrial era practices with bells and class schedules and stuff like that, right? There's a lag in society. Technology has outrun human society. We haven't caught up culturally to the information world. On top of that, it's changing at an incredible rate, technology right now. Right now, not only are we in the information era because of technology, but that era has not even matured yet. It's still in its infancy, and it's moving very fast, and very few people understand where it's going. It's very hard to imagine what human society is going to look like in 100 years. It's hard to imagine, right? Because there's so many variables at play, and we've never been there before. It's a whole new world. And so to win now, my understanding of all of this is that the more you can decentralize power, the more powerful you will be. And by you, I literally mean at any scale of society, right? Your goal ultimately is to push power to the edges. And that makes you the most anti-fragile possible, because what it means is that there is no head to chop off. Bitcoin was like the first real scalable implementation of a decentralized architecture of power. And look at what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like Bitcoin has essentially demonstrated the way the game is going to be played now. It's a new kid on the block, didn't make sense to anyone, and it's just gaining steam. It's just getting more and more powerful. But what is it? Like, what is getting more and more powerful? Well, Bitcoin. Well, what do you mean by that? Like, who is Bitcoin? Where is Bitcoin? What is this thing? It's this word that we use to describe an entire network, right? And multiple constituencies, 5, 6 at least, different major constituencies participate in the Bitcoin network. The network itself is made up of hardware, of software, geographically dispersed. It's a monster of sorts. It's like this thing, but it's completely decentralized, or it's the most decentralized thing we are aware of, at least, other than nature itself, I guess. But that is how you play the game. And if you want to succeed in the information age, you need to take your cue from Bitcoin and, to whatever extent you can, and over time, try to decentralize power within a given scope, right? This is why I said earlier, Start9 ultimately does not want power. We don't want to be a central party, powerful party. The reason for that is because we will fail. The more Start9 centralizes power, the more control we have, the faster we will die. Because the US government will chop our head off, right? Like, if we can be killed, we will be killed. So the only way to not be killed is to have no head, is to have no center. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we kind of surfaced that cultural aspect. I mean, it's something that it's what learning about the cultural effects of our money system being controlled and information, as we've been describing, it's what's driven my personal passion, because everything that you love to see in life, you love to see your family, your brother, your sister, your children succeed and to be able to thrive on their own, that can be squashed in due time if we do not have this decentralized growth of the technologies we've been mentioning. So very well spoken, very well said. Are there any concluding thoughts that you have to mention about Start9, about anything that we've been discussing that you'd like to just speak out to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I've got a rapid fire question here to conclude. So if you had a billboard that would be placed in with some urban area within the United States or somewhere in the world where the most eyes would see it, and you only really had a sentence or two, what would you say? What would you put on that billboard?
I swear by my life and my love for it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask a man to live for the sake of mine.
Wow. Where is that from?
That is John Galt's mantra.
Okay.
At Madex, the shirt you're wearing, likes to put on some of his artwork, by the way, too.
Oh, nice.
It basically means don't sacrifice yourself to other people. Don't die for their sake, and don't ask them to die for your sake. Take care of yourself. Expect other people to take care of themselves. And yes, you can help people out along the way, but it's not a moral obligation. That's ultimately what that quote boils down to.
Well said.
It's individualism from a moral perspective.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thank you for joining me today once again. And if you want to just shout out quickly where people can find you and find out more information about Start9.
Start9.com is your optimal starting point. I have multiple other podcasts that cover some of the topics we covered here today, as well as many others. Our Telegram chat is lively. We have a great community. That's t.me.start9_labs. Twitter, we are Start9 Labs. And that's it. There's a wealth of information at all of those locations, and we are very accessible. Start9 is not some, distant megacorp type of thing. We're, 10 individuals trying to build something cool, and we are very accessible and engaging with the community. I think you just wrote me a DM and this happened pretty quickly. So
yeah. I literally DM'd you on Twitter and you responded very quickly. So Thank you once again. Yeah, thank you. And that concludes it. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Yeah.
See ya.